September 3rd, 2018. That's the date Blackmagic Design released the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K to the public, making this camera over 3 years old. Since then, it feels like there's been a million cameras released from all the different camera companies, each one claiming to outperform the last, offering more and more features, bigger and better specs. Even Blackmagic themselves have released a few. So this raises a question: in a world of 12K resolution and 16 plus stops of dynamic range, is the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K a waste of money in 2022? Unfortunately, yes, this camera is a waste of money in 2022. Let me explain why. Starting with the fact that this is only a 4K camera. When it comes to resolution, more is nearly always better. It gives you a more detailed picture with less visible noise straight out of camera. If you're mastering in 4K and you shoot at a higher resolution than that, then you have the ability in post-production to crop into the image, to reframe, or to even stabilize the footage without losing any image quality. Not to mention that shooting in a higher resolution future-proofs all your work. If in the future you want to remaster into the standard definition of that day and age, then you've got the option to do that. And camera companies know this. This is why we've had an influx of cameras from Canon, Sony, Red, Blackmagic themselves, shooting 6K, 8K, even 12K resolution. The future truly is higher resolutions. Whoa, 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 whoa. This camera is not a waste of money. Everything just said there comes at a massive cost in terms of storage space. People think that it's free to shoot video these days, but it's not. All that data needs to be stored somewhere, and memory cards and hard drives aren't exactly free, are they? You also need a computer that is capable of pushing all that data around, and they're not cheap either. If you want to future-proof your work, you're going to need to store it somewhere, and that potentially could be terabytes and terabytes of data and storage just sitting there, not doing anything until some unknown future date when you actually want to make use of it. And what exactly is it that you're shooting that needs to be future-proofed? Most Hollywood feature films don't actually think too much about future-proofing. Let's face it, most people aren't making anything that really needs to be saved for the future. Do your YouTube videos and corporate videos actually need to be shot in 8K? And besides, 4K is going to look as good as it looks today in the future anyway. In fact, with up-resing technology and stuff like that, it might even look better. But maybe you do indeed have aspirations of being a theatrical filmmaker, and you want to put your movie up on the big screen and have the best possible quality. Well, it might surprise you that most movie theatres are not set up to project 4K. In fact, there's only a handful of them. Most cinemas in the US are only at the 2K standard. And even more surprising is that the most popular movie camera in the business, the Arri Alexa, isn't even a 4K camera. It shoots at 2.3K and then up-reses that to a 4K image. This camera is responsible for shooting some of the best films in the last 10 years or so, and I don't see many people complaining about the fact that it's not future-proofed and it needs to be a true 4K camera or even a 6 or 8K camera. Sorry, but yes, it is a waste of money. That's because resolution isn't the only limitation with this camera. Let's talk about sensor size. There's no doubt that the future of cinema cameras is full frame. Sony, Canon and Red all have brought out full-frame cinema cameras in the last year or two, and it's not surprising why. The bigger the sensor, the more light it's able to capture. The more light the camera is able to capture, the better the image is going to be in low-light situations. The Blackmagic 4K uses a significantly smaller micro four thirds sensor. That's a sensor that's only half the size of a full-frame sensor, and at half the size, it's only able to collect half the light. That means that in low light situations, you're going to have to increase your ISO. This is going to introduce more noise into the image, and that's not something that anybody wants. You're also able to get a shallower depth of field with a full frame sensor. This allows you to knock the background out of focus, create that nice bokeh look that everybody likes, and bring attention to the subject matter much easier. There's a certain full frame look that just isn't possible with a smaller sensor camera. The truth is that full-frame cameras are only going to become more and more popular as people crave that full-frame look. It gives it a kind of expensive richness to the quality of the video. And of course, the price of full frame is going to come down, so it's going to become more popular and easier for people to achieve. You're going to look a little bit different, maybe even a little bit cheaper compared to other people if you're shooting with the smaller sensor. If you don't want to waste your money, then now is probably not the time to start investing in Micro Four Thirds, a system that for many people has been on the way out for a couple of years now. No. This camera is not a waste of money. Most of the digital movies that have been shot in the last 10 years have been shot with a super 35mm sensor, and the Micro Four Thirds system isn't actually that much smaller than it. In fact, if you use a speed booster, you can actually get an image that is even larger than the 35mm sensor. Using a speed booster also gives your lenses an extra stop of light. This helps in low light situations, but it also makes it easier to get that shallower depth of field that we all love. But you don't need to use a speed booster if you don't want to. There are many great lenses made exclusively for the Micro Four Thirds system, and many lenses can be adapted to it. Canon EF lenses, Nikon AIS lenses, Leica M, even PL mount cinema lenses can be adapted to this camera. And many of the lenses that are made exclusively for the Micro Four Thirds system are indeed cheaper than the equivalent full frame lenses. Even without a speed booster, this camera is quite reasonable in low light situations. But you have to understand, most cinema cameras are not low light monsters. They're not run and gun cameras. You're supposed to be taking a more considered approach to crafting your images. You're supposed to use light and shade to create your story. If you want to shoot in absolute pitch black conditions, then maybe a cinema camera is not the right camera for you. Yes, it is a waste of money because this camera doesn't have autofocus. These days, cinema cameras have amazing autofocus options. In fact, mirrorless cameras have amazing autofocus options. Just look at any of the cameras from Sony or Canon. In fact, the 3-year-old EOS R that I'm shooting this on now even has dual pixel autofocus. With something like this, I'm free to move around back and forward, and I'm safe in the knowledge that the camera is going to track me and that I'm not going to lose this shot because it's out of focus. Knowing that you have a camera that has great autofocus and is able to track different subjects takes some of the weight off your shoulders and allows you to concentrate on the more creative side of filmmaking, like composition, lighting, and even other things like exposure. This can be a great weight off your shoulders. Autofocus can be a great time saver, and as we know, time is money. No, this camera is not a waste of money. The Blackmagic 4K camera does actually have an autofocus system. Yes, it's not a continuous autofocus system that can track faces and things like that, but it does have autofocus. And in fact, most cinema cameras don't have autofocus. This is a camera that encourages you to be deliberate with your shooting decisions. This isn't a camera that you just set to autofocus and hope for the best. It's a camera that wants you to be deliberate and precise with your decisions that help serve the story best. Besides, all autofocus systems can get confused and start tracking the wrong thing. Planning and executing your shots with intention will save you time and money when it comes to post-production, as you will know how the shots fit together, rather than trying to pull shots out of footage that was gathered on the fly in automatic mode. Yes, it is a waste of money. Let's talk about cost, shall we? Because this camera may appear cheap on paper, but to get the maximum out of it, you're going to have to build it out, and that is going to cost money, and it's going to add up quick. Speed booster, 600 quid. Monitor, 500 quid. Spare batteries, 200 quid maybe. A variable ND filter, another £200. Cards and media, 200 quid. An external hard drive, at least 100 quid. Then you've got all the leads and cables that you're going to need, another 100 quid. A cage to mount it all on, that's going to be at least 70 quid. And then all those random bits and bobs that you find that you always need, another 40 to 50 quid. This isn't the cheap camera system that it's made out to be. Why not spend all that money on a camera that works straight out of the box, that doesn't need all these accessories to get it working properly? Hey, you can even stay in the Blackmagic camera system if you want to. Get something like the Blackmagic 6K Pro with its better battery life, its flip-out screen, and its internal NDs. No, this camera is not a waste of money. I keep saying that. Look, you can build up any camera as much or as little as you want. And with this camera, you can build up your kit over time, adding stuff as and when you have the money. You don't need to have all that cash ready up front. And anything that you do buy, with the exception of the cage, can be used with other camera systems. You can't exactly rip the screen off the back of the 6K Pro and attach it to a red Komodo in the future if you choose to upgrade to that camera. All cameras need accessories to get the absolute best out of them, and if you buy accessories that aren't proprietary to one particular brand, you're going to save yourself money in the long run. Oh, and did I mention that you get a free copy of DaVinci Resolve Studio with this camera? I mean, it's almost worth the price of the camera just for that. The full version of DaVinci Resolve Studio gives you things that the free version leaves out, like the DaVinci Neural Network engine, whatever the hell that is. Things like stereoscopic 3D, the Fairlight and Resolve FX templates, including things like... So here's the plot twist to this whole video. I can't actually tell you whether the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K is a waste of money in 2022 or any other year for that matter. Now, I stand by all the points I've made in this video, they're all true, but I don't know you, I don't know what your needs are. And nor does anybody else who makes a video on the internet claiming that one camera is better than another. In fact, the whole concept of this type of video is a little bit ridiculous. The truth is, no one camera fits all, and not all people need the same features. For me, the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K is well worth the money. It fits my needs pretty well, but I also have a number of other cameras that I can use for different jobs. The lack of a great autofocus system doesn't really matter to me, but it could be a complete deal breaker to you. I mean, how the hell would I know? So what do we do about this? Filmmaking gear is far too expensive to just take a punt on and hope that it works out all right. If you want my advice, and considering you've got this far in the video, hopefully you do, then you need to be completely honest with yourself. Sit down and make a list. Make a list of the features that you need personally to get your job done. Now, this isn't a list of features that you'd like, or that some YouTube idiot like myself has told you that you need to have, and it isn't a list of things that your friend thinks that you might want or could be useful for them. This is a list of features that is specifically for you. Did I say specifically or specifically? It should be specifically. Number the features in order of importance to you, and then compare this list against the available cameras on the market. Then the cheapest camera that fulfills all of those specifications is the camera for you. And if you can't find a camera that fulfills all those specifications, then it's time to make a compromise. Cross off the bottom one of the list, the least important, and then research, and again, you'll find the camera that fits them, and that's the camera for you. Some of you might be thinking, Jesus, that's your advice, write a list. Well, one, don't call me Jesus, that's not my name. And two, yes it is, because the idea of this exercise is to be truthful with yourself and to find out what it is you truly need. So many people that I talk to get hyped about the new camera that's coming out and all the excellent features that it has, and they buy into that and think, well, I need that to be able to do my work. When the reality is that most of us don't need half the features that our cameras have. I mean, even the cameras that I own now, I use very few of the full list of features that it has. And I'm no different to anybody else. I get caught up in that hype as well. If I had the ability to buy every new camera that came out, I would buy every new camera that came out. But that's really not the sensible thing to do. If you want to make videos for a living, or you even just want to be a kind of keen hobbyist and make good videos, then you need to be more considered in what it is you need from a camera. Having said all that, I still think that the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K is still a great camera, even in 2022. If you're thinking about buying a Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K, then you might want to check out this video about good cheap lenses for it. But no pressure, it's entirely up to you.